Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have Mr. Ken Whittaker. He is the Executive Director for Michigan United and Michigan People's Campaign, and we're going to talk about the political recap from our latest election. Good evening and welcome to the show, Ken. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me, Kim.
Thank you for being on. I know it's been really busy, so let's get right to it. We just came off of a primary election. Ken, was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that you expected to see? And let me explain a little bit further. So there were some areas around the United States that were energized. For example, in Kansas, people showed up to the polls for the abortion ballot initiative. In Michigan, we saw that we had voter apathy because the people that were voting only showed up to about, I believe it was 16 to 18%. So it was less than 20%. I'm not sure if that's the exact number. That was the number that I heard, but I wanted to ask you if you had heard that as well. And then just talk to me about what you think that you saw on primary day, what that might mean for November.
Well, I'll tell you, I honestly expected below 20% turnout, but it actually turned out we had in the state of Michigan one of the more higher turnout elections on the midterm year, where there wasn't a complete absence of incumbents on the gubernatorial side. So like we actually had the highest voter turnout in a gubernatorial primary in which there was an incumbent. And this was the second highest turnout behind 2018 when there was like no incumbents at all. So like that is honestly what surprised me. I didn't expect that high of a turnout, but I have to like give credit to 2018 to promote the vote ballot initiative that passed and the new rules that were written, because we had about 50% absentee voters. And that is the reason why turnout was so high across the state. But I will say that in Wayne County, if we look at a heat map of turnout, like Wayne County is still like ridiculous.
Yes.
That I expect.
Okay.
I just didn't expect the rest of the state to like shine so bright. Yeah.
So, it's interesting because you bring up a good point, because the voter apathy that I had read about was based on the number of people that actually showed up to the poll, not absentee ballots.
Yeah.
So with all the controversy, especially from our last presidential election, with the proliferation of absentee ballots, do you foresee that sort of dying down, or is it still a controversial issue?
It's very controversial. I mean, we have Secure My Vote operating in the borders of Michigan right now. They tried to, when I say they, I mean Republican legislators, tried to push through voter suppression bills through the legislature, and the governor vetoed it. So in order to get around the governor's veto, they took those bills and they cobbled them together into a ballot initiative called Secure My Vote, Secure MI, on words. Secure My Vote. And then they've been tricking people to actually sign that ballot initiative around the state, saying, yes, we're trying to like make sure you have the right to vote, but you're actually trying to take away voting access for Black Michiganders, working Michiganders, and all communities of color, honestly, in Michigan. And reducing ballot access is not something that we need to be doing. It's actually increasing it, which is the purpose of the Promote the Vote initiative in 2018, and further codifying ballot access this year with Promote the Vote and ballot initiatives. So I expect that they will continue to attack our access to the ballot, but we'll just continue to fight back.
Excellent, because it is important to fight back. Every vote should count. So based on what you've seen, what do you think that says about November?
November is going to be a doozy. Primary elections are all about ideology. So that's why we find people who are normally on the same sides basically fighting against each other. It's all about ideology. And what I try and teach people is that going into the general election, you drop ideology. Going into general election, it's about survival and thriving. So surviving and thriving. Um, we need to come together for the November elections. I'm a little dismayed because Trump backed candidates
Mm-hmm.
prevailed in this primary. So we're really going to have a battle of ideas when we have like Trumpers who believe in the big lie, who said the Michigan elections were stolen, going against on more like the Democratic side, those who are progressive, those some moderates, but those who are saying that the elections are actually secure and that we actually need to expand voting access in this state. So I think November is going to come down basically to a battle of ballot access. Right now, Secure My Votes, they don't have the ability to like stop our access to the ballot, so it's not going to be effective for this year. But who wins in November, I think will play a very big role in how voter suppression or ballot access either improves or increases in the coming years.
Okay. And you're right. It is fascinating to see that Donald Trump's endorsement coming on the heels of the raid at Mar-a-Lago. So I want to switch gears a little bit. Ken, so in Michigan, we have two gubernatorial candidates. We have an incumbent in Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and then we have a rival who is a Trump-backed candidate, and her name is Tudor Dixon. First off, what do you think the effect of the raid on Mar-a-Lago will have on the endorsement from Donald Trump? Any
Nothing.
Nothing at all?
Nothing. See, Trump's base stays at this about the same percentage of the electorate. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down. Those that are literally following his endorsements are like sold on everything that he has to offer. It doesn't change. So you could have Trump go out, and I don't remember what street he said that he could go out on and shoot somebody, but wouldn't get in trouble. But you could have that happen, and that base would not change. So as long as we are getting out the vote, and we're bringing the middle and the left together, I'm not too much worried about a Tudor Dixon.
Okay. So I want you to hold that thought. I want to put a pin in that. I want to go back to the Trump story. So media-wise, it's interesting. Lots of different outlets are just seemingly outraged. And I'm confused, Ken, because I'm trying to figure out what are we outraged about. And I'm not celebrating the fact that his house was raided, because that means your privacy and everything else was taken away. However, yes, your privacy. I'm just saying, because he said they went in his safe, and I was like, well, that's what they do. But so here's the thing. Again, so you're talking about the base. So that means the stolen election that claim will continue. All these things about all these people fraudulently voting. I know in Michigan, there were several gubernatorial candidates who did not make it, who all said, we're going to stop dead people from voting. And I kept going, what dead people are voting? Seriously, we keep having this conversation. But what is your thought on Donald Trump being raided? What happens if technically, or not technically, theoretically, this ends up going to a federal trial or something, and he ends up going to jail? What does that do? Because the base is would you say that the base and the movement that Trump started are the same, or two different things, or are they conjoined at the hip?
I'd say the base and the movement right now are conjoined.
Okay.
But eventually, I think the movement will grow as ignorant people who have not been able to access what they think is dignity and justice in this country will start to just latch onto that movement. It's easy to hate. It's harder to love. It's easier to other somebody. It's harder to actually build a relationship. somebody, or develop tolerance, or nurture the tolerance that you already have. That's difficult. That's hard work. So I see the movement growing. I think that Donald Trump basically gave a megaphone to what already existed in this country,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and gave permission for those who just weren't sure of how much ignorance they could spew. It just gave them permission to spew it. And in turn, it's polarized our country. Before there used to be a very large middle, right? And that's where compromise is met. You know, that's why moderate Democrats were so powerful. Now it's completely polarized. The middle is almost the land of the lost. Either
Mm-hmm.
you are super far right or you're super far left, and anything in between, we don't even know how to spell compromise anymore. So as far as his home being raided, have at it. I was just surprised that it was so close to an election.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I was just surprised it was this close to an election, because justice authorities don't tend to operate this close to an election because you never want the Department of Justice or the CIA, FBI, whoever to say that, I mean, have it be said that they influence an election,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're Hillary Clinton in emails.
Right.
But
Yes, we're
that
still
was the
talking
only
about that.
surprise. Yeah, that was the only surprise for me. But as far as them raiding the house, this is what he's supposed to do. I mean, people who are outraged, the first thing I would ask them is it because he's a former president?
Mm-hmm.
You're still a citizen. You're
Yes.
still bound by the laws of this country, who, mind you, you swore to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
You're still bound by that. So
Mm-hmm.
if the FBI comes waltzing through those not so pearly gates at the front of Mar-a-Lago and into his home for a total of what, 8.5, 9.5 hours, then so be
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But a sitting president, nor is a former president above the law of this country.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not at all.
there was a lot of protection when you were a sitting president, because we don't want to literally sink our country.
Right.
We cannot have the leader of our country being put on trial and handcuffed and sent away unless it's just beyond all kind of repair. There is no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like a former president, you are a citizen. You are a citizen with glorified security, as far as I'm concerned. So if you broke the law, the country needs to come after you. If you're breaking the law, the country needs to come after you. If you put us on a path of destruction and literally ripping our constitution to shreds, yeah, Congress and authorities should come after
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. All right. So let's switch back to the gubernatorial election for Michigan. So we have Governor Gretchen Whitmer and we have Tudor Dixon. So, you know what's ironic to me? They favor each other. And I wonder if that was something that was intentional. And the reason I bring that up, Ken, is because I was watching Let It Rip, which is a local show here in Michigan.
you.
And one of the things that one of the her campaign staff said, well, she is hotter than our current governor. And I thought, really? Is that what we're talking about? We just came out of COVID, and yes, we're still in COVID. People are still looking for jobs. Companies are looking for employees. Inflation is high. Gas is over $4 a gallon. But yet, we are talking about who is hotter. Can make it make sense. Who did now? Because so I'm going to give you a statistic. So Newsweek ran a small poll after the primary, and they said that Gretchen Whitmer is about 10 points ahead of Tudor Dixon. Do you see that continuing? Do you see her being able to chip away? Are we just so lack of concern for politics that we're only concerned about with what she looks like that we would vote Tudor Dixon in? Am I wrong for thinking that?
You aren't wrong for thinking that, given everything that's happened in the last like what 6 years. But that sounds not sounds like that's some stuff that I said when I was 16 years old. Like for real. I'm just saying. But it just goes to show the complete detachment from reality and the lives that are being lived here in the state of Michigan, where you have somebody talking about how hot a governor candidate is instead of how hot it is outside and how hot it is in our homes and
Yes.
how high the price of electricity is going in order to cool off our homes. I
Mhm.
mean, they're talking about the wrong things, but they know that they can literally fool an electorate
Mhm.
instead of educating an electorate. Whereas we're trying our dangest to educate an electorate, have people understand what is really going on, and throw to the side all of the bull crap narrative that's being pushed. The other side, they just love to create stories, they love to create interest, and then they just push it and push it and push it out, and people eat it up. But it's our job as NGOs, non-government organizations, and community organizations, to literally build the relationship between like the suburbs, the urban areas, and the rural areas. Because honestly, when it comes down to like the real lived experiences that we have, it's affected by the same targets, the same target. If I was to walk canvassing door to door in a rural community and I ask, what do you think's to blame for the problems that you're having? Half of them, without any prompting, will say corporations,
Mhm.
rich people. But then at the same time, they will actually vote. They'll vote to give that rich person or that corporation power, which
Mhm.
is completely against their interest. And it's our job to like show people that conflict of interest and show them that there's actually another way. And part of that is, for one, a black man knocking on your door in rural Michigan and
Mhm.
actually having a conversation with you about the issues that you're facing. And then when I tell them like I'm facing the same issues and you confused, yes,
Mhm.
I live in Detroit, but we're literally having the same issues. So
Mhm.
when we start that kind of a dialogue, we can get past all of the bull crap narrative that's being put out there about, well, Tudor Dixon is hotter than Gretchen Whitmer. This is It's ridiculous. Because when if you think back 3 years, these
Mhm.
same people were calling Gretchen Whitmer hot.
Yes.
We're talking about my governor makes no sense. She's an idiot, but she's hot. I'm like, are
Mhm.
you serious? And
Mhm.
now here we are 3 years later. My governor's an idiot and our candidate is hotter. How stupid does this sound?
Mhm.
And there has got to be people around this state with enough sense to call it what it is: ignorance and stupidity and sexism.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. I was getting to that. I was getting to that. Thank you for bringing it up, Ken, because that is an important point. Before we get to that, there was, and I forget his name. He was the gubernatorial candidate. He did not make it. But one of the things that struck me in his commercial, he kept talking about woke Whitmer. She is trying to indoctrinate our children. And he wanted to make Michigan the number one state for parents' rights. Ken, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys are hearing in terms of conversations when you're canvassing? This whole, people have turned the term being woke into something comical now. Can you
Mhm.
talk about people's concerns with that and what that really looks like in terms of support for the governor? Is that something that's going to be a hindrance against her because of some of the controversial things like shutting the state down during COVID? We know that that was a good thing because
Mhm.
everybody shut everything down. The president of the United States shut everything down. But yet and still, people have an issue with that. There was the closure of schools. There's been some other things in terms of LGBTQBIA community, in terms of restrooms and different accommodations. Talk a little bit about that.
Ooh, that was a long question. I'm trying to remember the actual
I'm
question.
sorry.
uh, uh, I don't think we have a problem with woke people being the turnoff for voters. Honestly, it's easy to demonize waking up because it takes work.
Mhm.
It takes work. It honestly takes work for me, and it's draining for me to like go outside of my comfort zone keep an open mind, actively listen, not to judge, but to understand. That stuff is hard.
Mhm.
So when we hear people talk about, oh, you just woke and woke people this and woke syndrome, they're literally doubling down on laziness, intellectually lazy. And that's exactly what we need to fight against. We need people who are thinking deeply, not shallow, but deeply, and not being intellectually lazy. But these intellectually lazy people are also the loudest. And they also have the most time on their hands to get your attention with their loud voices. There are a lot of us who don't believe that woke people are a problem. There are a lot of us who don't believe that political correctness is a bad thing. But those people are busting their butts every day, 9 to 5, or 11 to 7, or 3 to midnight. They don't have time to engage in all of this bull crap. And at some point, there's not even a willingness to engage in that bull crap because they've already reached a decision that you're ignorant, you're stupid, can't do anything about you, gonna live my life, gonna work, come home, feed my family, get up and go do it again. And when it comes time to vote, yeah, sure, I'll vote on my way to work so I can do it all over again. Meanwhile, you've got people with all of the time on their hands, access to media,
Mhm.
and media who are willing to put a camera on them because it's ratings. It's provocative.
Yes.
Sounds like a Jay-Z Kanye West song. Why they do it? It's provocative. And
Provocative.
that's why they're doing it.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not provocative for me to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go for a bike ride, feed myself, and then sit down for 9 straight hours talking to people, learning their self-interest, learning our mutual self-interest, and how to plan on building power to change their lives, and then go for a bike ride, eat, and then go to bed. That's boring. But it's much more exciting to wake up and say, my governor is hot, or my governor ain't hot, or my governor is an idiot, or they shut down the state. It's ridiculous how much how much stage we give these people. And
Mhm.
at some point, I believe at some point, this state, this country will be tired of it. It's just too much. It's too draining. It's too anxiety inducing. And honestly, it's too depressing.
You bring up some great points, and it just made me remember we have another trial going for the two individuals that tried to kidnap the governor.
Yeah.
Do you think that now one of the interesting things that came out of that, they were polling the different people for the jury, and the judge had to instruct them, this is not about whether or not you trust the governor or the government. And I thought, wow,
This
is
is
it
where we are.
this is where we are. Do you think that will have an impact on the election here in Michigan?
Um, it will help to turn out those of Trump's base who are already going to turn out. That's why I mean by his base doesn't grow, it doesn't shrink. It stays the same. These people are loyalists.
Mhm.
So I don't think that this trial will have too much of an impact on an election, but it will have an impact on the psyche of those who are engaged in the politics in this. When you have a group of people who want to literally kidnap your governor,
Yes.
take her across state lines and hang her,
Hmm.
and they aren't held accountable,
Hmm.
it sets a dangerous precedent in this state, not just for elected officials, but let's be real. They wouldn't even been doing this if this was a man.
Right.
I'm adamant.
Hmm.
All of the crap that we've been through the last 3.5 years, half of the stuff wouldn't even happen if Gretchen Whitmer was like Garfield Whitmer.
Hmm. Hmm. Talk about sexism and how it impacts how we view candidates, because we're having that same conversation around Vice President Kamala Harris. Everybody keep trying to paint her as not being the right choice, that we should have chosen someone else, yada yada yada. And conversations around she's not electable. And as I keep telling people, I said she's not electable because she's a woman, and you don't want to vote for a woman. Just say that. Stop saying that she's not electable for all these different reasons because they're bogus. What are your thoughts on that, Ken?
I'm confused because I could have swore she was elected multiple times already.
She was. Yes, you are correct.
So when you say that she's not electable, are you saying she's not electable by those outside of the constituents that she was already elected by?
Yes.
So you're saying that the state of California is different than the country. And what you're saying is the rest of the country basically is sexist and racist and chauvinist, but
Yes.
California ain't. So
Yes.
let's really dig in deep. Is that what
Mm-hmm.
people are saying?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I
Oh,
think so.
okay. Well, in
Mm-hmm.
that case, I guess she's electable. I'm just not even going to entertain too much of the dumbness. I mean, like, basically, a lot of this conversation would be happening if Joe Biden was not old
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
showing his age.
Yes.
We wouldn't even be having these conversations. People
Mm-hmm.
are just scared that Kamala Harris is going to be the president. Let's just keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
You're scared Kamala Harris is going to be the president.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden is very up there in age,
Mm-hmm.
and he shows it.
Mm-hmm. He does.
And Kamala is
Mm-hmm.
a confident, educated Black woman
Mm-hmm.
who is qualified to do the job she does and to do the job she did and do the job that she will come to do. Plain and simple, and people can be upset about that all they want. You can be upset this year, you can be upset 10 years from now, and you could be upset 20 years from now. But at some point, your upsetness is literally like just tears in the bucket for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and that's a great segue back to our gubernatorial election. How do you think that sexism will play? Because the base is interesting. It seems to be a type of woman that they will vote for. Am I wrong? Because it looks like that. There's a type, and maybe you don't want to answer that question, Ken. I see the look on your face, and I'm like, oh wait.
In my head, I'm working my way around my own answer.
Is there? Let me rephrase it. Is there a type of candidate that can be interchangeable, and she can be a woman or a man that fits the current Trump base ideal?
I don't think it's interchangeable. I
Okay.
really don't. I
Okay.
think that the Trump base idolizes white men.
Mm-hmm. They do.
And that when a white woman ascends to candidacy, that white men look at her as just covered in Trump. They don't look at her as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look at her as a principled person. They don't look at her stances. All they see is Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Trump said this, we're gonna rock with it. But you take away a Trump endorsement, these would be the same men rapping onto their dicks. These would be the same men closing the doors, closing the gates, elbowing her out, telling her she's not ready. Go sit down somewhere. Go to a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
These are the same men that literally tell their wives, go cook me a meal, but
Mm-hmm.
it then turn around and say, well, Trump says this, so Tudor's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a game.
It
It's a
is a game.
game that eventually they will lose.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kind of game that when people lose, lives are lost.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't care that lives are lost. Just like they didn't care that lives are being lost as the state was pushed open. They didn't care. All they cared about was the dollars that were coming into businesses. And those business owners are like, well, those that are working for me, they just need to go work. They just need to do their job with no concern about life.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't think that when it comes to interchanging a man and woman in Trump world, that life is even considered, sex is even considered. It's just whether or not you bow down to Trump.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. Tudor Dixon says a lot of the same things that Donald Trump has said. She sort of escalated it up, like Herschel Walker did in Georgia with his race with Raphael Warnock. It's almost like they sort of talk. They have the same talking points from a playbook. So it's interesting because there was a legislator, and I cannot remember his name. He said this nationally. He said the quiet part out loud, Ken. He said, the abortion, Roe v. Wade being overturned. He said, when women get abortions, they have an opportunity to have a career. That means there's women in the workplace. Yes, Ken, he said this. And white guy. So, Ken, first, tell me, were you surprised by the voter participation in Kansas? Were you surprised by that, and why?
I was surprised. I
Okay.
won't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Even I occasionally fall into the red state, blue state. You're just
Mm-hmm.
gonna do this, and we're gonna do that. I
Mm-hmm.
was surprised. But when I dug in, I realized like there's a huge chink in the armor of the right to life. And when I say right to life, I mean the right to life and GOP tied together movement.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chink.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chink in that armor, and it's called life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's called life and living and lived experiences. They take for granted that even the people on their side have reproductive freedom stories.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people got to where they are because they actually had the choice to make um, they had the opportunity to make decisions about their own reproductive ability, where and when, and by who.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
you have freedoms like that, yes, you are the steward of your life. Yes, you can usher yourself toward an American dream. Other than that, honestly, you're a slave.
Right.
You have no body autonomy whatsoever. And
Mm-hmm.
and I know we're not talking about black women, we're talking about like Kansas, but I have to say, like when you think about black women, you haven't had body autonomy since you came into this country.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So when you start to like put it in those terms, some women might talk one way and gonna vote the other way when they
Mm-hmm.
actually get in that ballot box. You might, and some homes are very oppressed. You might tell your husband, "Yeah, I agree," and blah blah blah, and Trump this and Trump that. And when you go and you vote, that is your personal, private booth
Mm-hmm.
to express your values, your beliefs, regardless of whatever oppressive system, oppressive relationship, oppressive party that you're under. That is your moment to speak your value, your beliefs in black and white and put it through a machine. It's your chance. And I think that's what happened in Kansas. So I'm fed by it, confused, but kind of fed by it, and very hopeful. I don't think that we I know we have a big fight ahead of us in the state of Michigan as far as reproductive freedom, um, but I don't think that the result of this election, should everything get on the ballot as we plan, I don't think the results would be as surprising as Kansas.
Okay. Do you think that the access to reproductive freedom slash abortion, is that the galvanizing issue for this election?
Yes, yes, and even the Republicans know it. There's a reason why Mike Shirkey came out and said, "Listen, the gubernatorial election ain't important to us no more. It is this ballot initiative. This ballot initiative is the end all be all and could open up doors that we don't want open." They're already thinking long term. They're
Mm-hmm.
thinking long term threat to their power.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even thought about all of the long term repercussions to their power
Mm-hmm.
that they are already thinking of. And they're pivoting a lot of their work towards fighting off this ballot initiative that honestly would be going to fighting Governor Whittaker.
Mm-hmm.
And that should say something to us. That should say something. It speaks volumes to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, you come back off the gubernatorial election a little bit just to go after this ballot initiative? we must be on to something. Let's
Mm-hmm.
push.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Mm-hmm.
push.
Mm-hmm.
Let's the galvanizing issue. Yes, I think it will be the tide turner in this election.
Do you think that Democrats can use this to their advantage? Because it doesn't seem like they have sort of gathered around it and used the steam. We've heard Republicans sort of backpedal and say, "Oh
Mhm.
no, 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 we didn't. That's not what we were saying."
I am hopeful that those on the left can appropriately use this opportunity to drive an election forward. I'm hopeful.
Great answer, Ken. Thank you for that. Ken, thank you so much for coming on the Kim B. Davis Show. We so appreciate you. Yes, our time went by so quickly. Tell us how we can reach you. Tell us what you have coming up.
Absolutely. You can reach me at ken at miunited.org and ken at mipeoples.org. Anything partisan, send it to MI Peoples. Anything issue based, election education, send it to MI United because it represents two different organizations for two different purposes. Right now, we are gearing up for the general election and Labor Day. Historically, Labor Day has been the launch of our Get Out the Vote program, and this year is no different. In the city of Detroit, there'll be a Labor Day parade for the first time in three years,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking forward to canvassing all of the parade goers and getting started with our GLTV efforts. Um, where we're continuing to train candidates to run for office, not as a savior candidate, but from a movement. So that way, their movement, their organization, their team is as strong the day after an election, regardless of win or loss, than it was on election day or the day prior to the election. And just making sure that everybody stays issue focused. It's very easy to get caught up in blue and red and purple state. But honestly, whatever color our lives are, that's the color at hand. That's the color we need to be repping. So miunited.org, mipeoples.org, and we hope that you'll engage with us.
Excellent, Ken. Thank you so much for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. We know that we will have you back to talk more election results and things that are going on because the races are heating up, especially in Georgia. We're going to have to talk about that on the next show with Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. You want to say anything really quick before we leave?
I cannot wait for that race to be over because I got a whole lot to say that I won't say until it's over.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to hold you to that because that means that's something to whet our appetites for the next show.
Hey, I promise you, I will not hold back.
Okay, excellent, excellent. We appreciate you. Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. You know, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, TikTok, everywhere on social media. And it's Kimberly Bachelor Davis. Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Bachelor Davis. You can listen to this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can find out more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent and go vote.